Welcome to Sprinkle with Hope podcast with your host, Jason. We are so excited today about today's episode. We have an awesome guest with us, Dr. Roseann Kapana-Hodge. She's with us today. She is amazing. You guys are really going to love her. But let me just give a little bit of background. Dr. Roseann is a mental health trailblazer, founder of the Global Institute of Children's Mental Health, and Dr. Roseann Kapana-Hodge, LLC, who is changing the way we view and treat children's mental health. So we are going to talk about mental health today. So hopefully you get something out of this that really will help you, just figure out what you are. And this is going to be a fun episode. So thank you, Dr. Roseann, for coming on with us today.
Well, I'm so excited to be here. I mean, I'm all about teaching people how to believe and have hope. So such a great name for your podcast. I'm grateful to be talking about mental health because we all need a little TLC in 2021.
Yes, we do.
So we do.
Dr. Roseann, would you kind of give just a little bit of, I gave you just a little snippet. Yeah. Would you kind of mind just talking about kind of what you do I know you have a book coming out, so we'll talk about that, but just give just a little brief background history.
Sure. So I'm a psychologist and a therapist. This is my 30th year in mental health.
Wow.
Supporting kids, their families. I've also worked with adults, but I really love working with kids and their families because there's always so much we can do at any point. But, kids are struggling. They've been struggling for a very long time, long before this pandemic. We're at a crisis level. And right before the pandemic started in January of 2020, I founded the Global Institute of Children's Mental Health because I really am on this mission to change the way we view and treat children's mental health. I have been on hundreds of TV shows, top tier publications, podcasts, because people need to hear that there are things they can do to reduce and reverse mental health. And they're just not getting that message. And it makes people feel truly out of hope. And I want to, these are things, it doesn't matter where you follow me, you buy my book, I'm giving this information out to people. They just need to believe and take action.
That's great. So I'm not an expert like you, but Dr. Roseann, is there ways that we can identify with as somebody who might be starting this journey and might start having mental health issues? Is there a signal or something that we can see that will help us?
Yeah, such a great question because this is a scary statistic, a startling statistic that's really accurate. It takes 11 years from the onset of the first signs of a mental health problem before somebody gets appropriate mental health, according to NAMI. Wow. 2019. And people say, how is that possible? Are we including third world countries? No, this is the US. Wow. And I see this every day. I see people going, asking for help. We can only connect the dots looking backwards, right? But what are some signs, right? So, and adults and kids show their issues differently, but really there's a lot of crossover. So one of the first things that are signs of mental health issues are actually what we call somatic signs. And those are body signals. Those are issues with things like sleep problems. One of the most prevalent issues in any type of mental health issue is sleep problems. Getting to sleep in particular, but staying asleep or having issues waking up. Okay, that doesn't mean your teen has a mental health issue. Could mean it, but teens don't wake up because of the hormone changes, people. So, but it's having gastrointestinal issues, like very, very common to have things like constipation or, loose stools, or really just belly aches and gas and all kinds of upset. I've had so many people be what's called a cyclical vomiter, and they just get so stressed they vomit. And then, really things that, especially, signs that you might see would be a change. So somebody was like a happy, these guys were joking, I said I'm always in a good mood. And this is actually a really stressful day for me. And they were like, we'd like to really see you on a good day, But what if all of a sudden I was just snippy and crabby for an extended period of time, or sad and withdrawn? You want to look for those signs and symptoms. I mean, really, the thing about mental health, I think that people are realizing in 2021, guys, is that nobody's immune from having a mental health issue.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I would guess a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, those signs, go back to stress and anxiety. And can you explain the difference between those two things? Again, I'm not an expert, but
yeah. So stress is a normal thing that happens to all of us. Okay. Right. If you think about I'll tell you my last petty annoyance, maybe because I'm already cranky today, was it's always a Subaru or a Honda Honda. Okay. I'm just a Honda CRV. They will not get out of the passing lane, right? So I had a car pacing, and the whole line of, 12 cars behind me, with this Honda CRV. Great car. I'm just saying, right? So
yeah.
She's in the passing lane. We're late for school. What happens, right? What happens when you're stressed? You get a physiological response. You get a little hot, you might feel a little cranky. Not saying that somebody, maybe some expletives come out, right? Your body has this physiological response to stress, and that's because our stress system is called an autonomic nervous system. So you get agitated or upset, whatever the word is, and your nervous system goes from a relaxed parasympathetic state, I call that the hot tub state. Then you go into this sympathetic dominant, and that's designed to help you, put all your resources in, get your cortisol going, because that's what stress is supposed to be like. Well, a healthy response, right? You get agitated, right? I mean, I let it go, right? I was like, whatever. Okay, I'm going to be late, whatever it is, right? Let's crank up the music, right? So then my nervous system goes back down to my nice hot tub state. And I call it the hot tub state because you know exactly what I say. When you're super relaxed, you come out of the hot tub, you're like, wow, I feel great. But when you have chronic stress, you start living in this sympathetic activated state. And the more activated you are, the more you experience uncomfortableness, right? So like today, Amazon censored me today. So today's not a day that I want to maybe do other things that are risky, right? Because I'm just going to be like, because what's going to happen is potty words are going to come out of my mouth. That's what's going to happen.
Right.
That's how I manage stress. It's associated with high IQs, people, potty words. So you have to do that. So what's the difference between stress and anxiety? So, in normal response, you have stressors, you get in an argument with your teenager, your kid falls and, oh my gosh, your nervous system goes back to normal, but you have lots of compounded stressors. Like you have the world's worst boss. Okay. And every day that man or woman is micromanaging you and making your life hell. Okay. That is ongoing stress. And when you have ongoing stress, it can flip into anxiety, depression, OCD, other issues. Now, we often think of mental health issues as only being genetic, right? That's from great marketing from pharma. And they want you to think that everything is biochemical and that a pill is going to fix it. But really, a lot of mental health issues result from chronic long-term stressors, some of them very serious, right? Like we think about what's going on in the pandemic, people have lost their jobs, people, just never not knowing where the next meal is coming from. These are like stressors that are beyond terrible. Having breakup of marriages, the number one stressor, divorce. And so, these are things that really can trigger other, mental health issues. The clinical definition of anxiety or any of these things, there has to be a significant life impact. So there has to be an impact in your relationships, your work, your schooling in some way, shape, or form. And that's when it becomes a clinical issue. And you can be functional. This is the part that most people don't think about in mental health. They think, like in the movies, that you have to be like bedridden,
Right.
not going anywhere. That's not what mental health looks like. Mental health looks like most people are functioning, right? We're not saying they're functioning well, but they might have really high functioning in one area and the other area be terrible. So when you hear about things like celebrities like Anthony Bourdain or Kate Spade killing themselves, you say, how is that possible? They had, Anthony Bourdain had this amazing show and Kate Spade had this great business. Well, they might have put all their energy in that, and then they were suffering internally, right?
Mhm.
And we just
Yeah.
don't know that. So, whenever somebody is suffering, and that's where I think a lot of people think, I can't be depressed or my kid can't be anxious. Like in America, we use grades as a benchmark of mental health. So many people will say to me, I saw little signs that my kid was anxious. They didn't want to come out with the family, but they were straight A student. I didn't know how depressed they were, or anxious they were. So we have to think beyond that. And I do think people are really changing their ideas about mental health during this unprecedented time of stress in 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, that's awesome. As you were talking, it kind of reminded me of something I heard yesterday, which was, maybe you could clarify this, but the vagus nerve, runs from our brain all the way down into our stomach and even into our pelvic area. And so is that part in why, they have these vomiting problems and they get sick to their stomach? I've also heard that that's like where you say trust your gut, or you get that intuition in your gut, trust your gut feeling, is
Yes.
because that vagus nerve is connected to the brain going all the way down through the body.
Yeah, most people don't realize. So the vagus nerve is the connector, right?
Mm-hmm.
But your actual gut has almost as much electrical activity in it as your brain.
Mm.
And people are like, what? And that's why, you hear happy gut and gut health is so important. The vagus nerve, there's a bi-directional influence between your brain and your gut. And that vagus nerve is that connector, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, but yeah, your gut is your alert system in a lot. And that's why people will feel things in their stomach, a disruption, of some kind. And gastrointestinal symptoms are very, very common with anybody with any level of stress or distress.
Mm.
That
That's
is
really cool.
fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, I could tell you all kinds of geeky things about our stress response system and the brain and the body. I mean, the basis of the work that I do is literally, this is what I do. This is the basis is I teach people to regulate their nervous system, and then you come in with new learning. And why people come to me and have such dramatic change is because you can't learn. You cannot process information. You cannot act if your nervous system is in a stress hyperactivated state. It's based on physiology. You actually can't heal. So if you have an autoimmune disease or you have Lyme disease or something else going on and you're getting great medical care, but your nervous system is stress hyperactivated, as we talked about, it's not in that hot tub state. The way that the body, how it works is it will say, oh, let's send all the troops to figure out what the stressor is. We're going to ignore something that's there, like a tick-borne illness or celiac disease. We know you have that. So we're going to put that on the side. And then your body gets stuck in this non-healing state. And until you calm down the nervous system, which there's lots of ways you can do, they're all natural. It just takes intent, and you really have to actually practice them. You can really start creating massive change for both the healing response, but in a physical problem, but as well as a mental health problem.
So are there certain things that we can do to help people through these stressful times and their anxiety and those type of things? And we might be talking about children, but I think some of that also applies to adults.
Oh, it's
So
100% equally applicable to today's a day adults as well. You know, it is absolutely. And you know, I think sometimes people overthink things, right? Like I'm a huge fan of big things, like I do neurofeedback and biofeedback and psychotherapy and things like that. But it's really it's the daily thing. So you know, what can people do? I have a really simple protocol, 4 parts, called the REPS protocol. And I teach kids this, I teach adults this, I teach organizations this. And, you know, people like things to be broken down, right? And REPS, it started with that had that as sort of my antidote to reentry panic syndrome as people were reentering the world. But the more I talked about it, I was like, this is really applicable to anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 4 parts. REPS are respirator, breathe. E is for envision or visualizing. P is for positivity, and S is for stress management. And it all starts with breath work. Well, I should have another one. It all starts with hope and belief, and we'll tie that to vision. But it's one of the biggest obstacles that I see in healing is just people believing, right? You know, like, you know, recently I had a situation where we had not typical for me. Most of my parents that I work with are like awesome and they're all in and they trust. Well, I had somebody who didn't trust, right? And what is trust really about? It's about not believing and having hope, right? So no matter what we did, it was literally almost like a daily kind of phone call with this mom, right? And what was happening is this kid actually was getting dramatically better, doing some neurofeedback and some other types of a type of psychotherapy specific to her problem. And it was so much, she was like almost throwing a wrench in this process, right? And it's like, you know, you get her to a certain point and it was like, well, she doesn't have panic attacks anymore. She's not doing this anymore and she's not doing that. And then it was, you know, it was still a lot of but, and ultimately it was about that this kid believed that she could get better. That was not even the issue. It was about this mother not being able to believe. And eventually her voice quieted and she started to see there was change. But when we hack into the power of our brain and what we tell it, you know, your brain will believe anything you tell it, right? So why don't you tell it good stuff?
Totally.
yeah.
You know, I mean,
Amen.
and right. And I always use the analogy, like a batter doesn't go up to bat and say, I'm going to stink.
Right.
He's like, I'm going to knock this out of the park. And you're going to just more likely to, whether you want to call it manifest or whatever you want to call it, it's really about your subconscious brain and everything in your body activating. So we go back to the REPS protocol. What I like to do is start with breath. And part of that is the vagus nerve. And it's getting your whole autonomic nervous system to just relax, get it down into that parasympathetic state. Again, understanding that nothing is going to change in our actions and our thinking if we don't calm our nervous system down. And I love very simple breathing techniques, but ultimately you have to do what's called a belly breath, a diaphragmatic breath. And my favorite breath is a 4-7-8. So it's in for 4 seconds, hold for 7, and then a long exhalation for 8. And you repeat that 3 times in a row. And I like to do it at least 3 times a day. And it can really be quite dramatic in helping people, especially when you're doing it before you're stressed out. It's a great thing to do if you're like me, that lady in the Honda CRV.
Yeah.
Right? You know, I might even do like some other techniques like EFT tapping or something like that. But so, you know, music is a great way and giggles are a great way for me to calm down. And I had my 10-year-old with me and he's a giggler. So we definitely, and he's a dancer. So we can either go either way or combine them. But so breath work is the first part in the reps, and then envisioning, seeing yourself, whatever you're struggling with, right? So maybe it's seeing yourself like, you know, your difficult boss. Maybe it's seeing yourself getting through that day and having a great day. Maybe it's a bigger vision of I've got another job. But I like for people to stay present and really try to keep things realistic, because sometimes when we don't, we feel even sadder, right?
Yeah.
And then positivity. It's about saying positive things to yourself out loud. People are rough on themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, what goes on in people's heads and what they say to themselves, nobody else would ever say that to you.
No. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I did have one quick question.
Sure.
So on that 4, 7, 8,
Yeah.
is that a inhale through the nose and out the mouth, or is that inhale and exhale out the nose?
And you want to fill up. Most people breathe wrong. When they try to pull air in, they suck their stomach in. What you want to do is fill it up like a balloon, and you can practice by you can do it on the floor or seated, and you put your hand on and you want it to rise. So as you pull air in, have your stomach rise, hold, and then exhale out of your mouth.
Okay.
And you can, there's other kinds of breaths, as long as it's a true belly breath, and you always want to try to get that exhale a little bit longer. That's what really helps get you down into that parasympathetic state. And then the last S is stress management. And you got to pick something, and you got to do it 10 minutes a day. So if it's breath work, if it's meditation, which I don't care who you are, you can do meditation.
Yeah.
Great apps. You can do yoga, you can do biofeedback, you can do neurofeedback, you can do prayer, you can do gratitude journaling. I mean, there's just so much you can do. You just got to do it. And I practice stress management techniques 7 days a week, at least. I mean, I would say it's 3 or 4 times a day. There's something I'm doing in some way, shape, or form, even if it's small things, right? And, I even include laugh therapy in there. I think people don't know how to have fun anymore.
I agree.
You know what I mean? And there's nothing like a giggle. And, I love to send my friends memes, just to have a meme off.
Totally. I totally get it. And something interesting that I also heard too was our voice and our mouth is so connected to that vagus nerve. So when you do laugh or talk or even sing, right? Like that's why music is such a helpful thing, because you're grabbing that vagus nerve by using your mouth, and that, so you're doing breath work, you're singing, you're laughing, you're whatever, you're talking. That also helps that vagus nerve to calm down, because they are very much connected.
So connected. I mean, there really is it's the connector between your brain and your gut. And there's so much that can happen, right? And we think there has to be this thing, right? Okay, so you can have a clinical issue. And yes, I have the thing. I have neurofeedback and biofeedback and psychotherapy. These things are really dramatic. But you start doing these little things during the day. Like, I'm going to really do some things to laugh, right? I'm going to hang out, right? And that's not to say, I have some really fun people in my life, including my husband, who, yesterday I cut my finger open, and I was like, could you get some extra Band-Aids for me? And he's like, he sends me a picture, and it's Star Wars Band-Aids. And I said, these are not for the kids. And he said, but they'll have the Force with them, and they'll work better.
Yes.
I love it.
So I've been laughing about that for 24 hours now. Do you know what I'm saying? I might even do a TikTok on that, right? So, but that's the kind of fun you gotta have. Right. You know what I mean? And
totally.
And I know when you're like, Roseann, I'm depressed and I'm not there, but take micro steps. I think that's the hardest part. We can't put ourselves on the top of the mountain. You have to just be in that moment. And that's where these techniques like breath work, they really can have such a dramatic impact on your mental health. You just have to do that, right? It's like working out. You got a dusty old treadmill, get your butt on there, go and walk out and do things. So, that's why it's so, so important, because there's such a direct correlation to how we treat our body and what we say to ourselves and what we think, to really the long-term impact of mental health.
That's awesome. Well, Roseann, this has been a fascinating conversation. I would love to have you on again for sure. We have at the very end of our podcast, we always like to ask 2 questions, and we call it the double down dose. And so I'm going to ask a question, then Shane's going to ask a question. So what is your definition of hope? We've talked about it a little bit, but I want to hear what your definition of hope is.
Yeah, my definition of hope is believing and seeing what you want to have happen. I mean, that really is what my idea of hope is.
Okay, great. That's really good. I have also very much enjoyed this discussion. I love your reps thing. I think I'll implement that for myself and, share that with others. The second part of Double Down Dose, we've talked a lot about stress and anxiety. So we came up with an acronym HOPE, HOPE, and the O stands for overcome. So what does that mean to you, to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, well, what it means to me instantly, it makes me think of all the special needs parents that I work with, including myself being a special needs parent. And, it is a rough journey. And when you struggle for yourself, it's hard. But when you see your child struggle, it is indescribable pain. And what I always say to parents, there's a lot of things you can do. And, I title my book, It's Gonna Be Okay, because it's what I tell every parent, and they need to hear that. And I lay out for them how these 8 pillars, I call them the 8 pillars of hope and healing. Because there's so much you can do. And when I think about overcoming, it's really about staying positive, taking one thing. I also often say little waves create big waves. And so you stay in that moment, stick with what you're doing, and don't give up. And that's really how you overcome things. And always trust your gut. We are a culture where people don't trust their gut. Is one of my greatest gifts my parents gave me was to truly, essentially in Italian, tell me to not give a crap what people said. and I really own that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And never to be rude, but don't let anybody fool you, know yourself and know who you are. And when you do that, you're able to really trust your gut. And we're in this place where people are losing hope, especially as a special needs parent, because they're jumping on the worry train and they're not listening to their gut. And when you really hone in on that and I talk about the medical, the healing pyramid, right? And we put a physician on top. No, you need to kick that person off. You need to put yourself on top. Mm-hmm. And that's how you overcome things. And belief, hope, and trusting your gut are all really connected. So that's what I think about overcoming.
This has been somebody who's fantastic. This has been so great. So you did mention your book a little bit. I do want you to talk about that. When's it going to release and what kind of what it's about?
Yeah. So I have a book called It's Gonna Be Okay. The subtitle, we'll see what Amazon said. They won't let me have proven ways to reverse mental health. So it's probably going to be proven ways to improve mental health. Mm-hmm. We'll see what happens. But it's really, I do call it the 8 pillars of hope and healing. And I teach people, this is my life's work. This is my 30 years worth of work where people come to me in my center or work with me virtually, which I still do. And it really lays out what you need to do in the foundational components. And you may say, well, 8 things, holy moly, that's a lot. No, what I want you to know is there's a lot you can do. And I show you how to do it. And so, what are those things? So 6 of them are the same for any type of issue, regardless of age. And, it's stress management, it's sleep, it's detoxification, nutritional deficiencies, and genetic mutations. And then I really hone in on parenting and which type of parenting tweaks, very specific kinds of tweaks, can really help your kids to listen and take action differently. And then brain-based therapy. So I really walk you through meditation, psychotherapy, EFT tapping, neurofeedback, and just open up for people these therapies that they may not have considered. 40 pages of research citations so people can feel wow, this is trusted content. I want you to be Google MD, but you don't have to be Google MD. Because I've done the work for you. It's a great book. There's lots, it's super enjoyable. It is available now on pre-sale. You can go to itsgonnabeokay.com, and I have a ton of free freemiums for people when they put in that they bought the book. And then it comes out May 11th, and I will have an Audible. I just don't have time.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely
But it's coming.
I'm going to look up the book. Thank you for that information. Dr. Roseann, this has been a fantastic discussion. I truly appreciate your time, your insight, and your dedication to really changing the way that we view these mental health issues. So thank you so much, and best wishes to you and your family and everything that you have upcoming.
Well, thanks for having this conversation, because every time we talk about mental health and we help to destigmatize it, and I know whenever we do these things, somebody is positively impacted. And so thank you for bringing this to all your listeners. So, and thanks for cracking up at my jokes.
No, of course. And I would second what Shane said, and that is, we do need to talk about these issues. And I think oftentimes we sweep them under the rug and say, oh no, they're not real, or, you're making it up, or yeah, these are real things. They're just not external things, right? Like there's people that have sicknesses, illnesses, and you can physically see those. These are illnesses that people have that you just can't see. And some of them don't show them readily, right? They just kind of try to hide them. And
no, I mean, if we had, as a mom who, had a child with Lyme disease that led to something called PANDAS, which is the body it's a misdirected immune response. The body starts attacking itself, creates inflammation, and then neurocognitive or neuropsychiatric problems can result. So my son had psychiatric problems. He was very much an externalizer. And I'm going to tell you that if he had cancer, I would have been treated very differently. And instead, very much rejected. And it didn't matter how fun I am, because you know how fun I am and how awesome the Hodge parties are with our MTV Cribs pool, because we do have one. So it didn't matter. And we just can't do this to people. We can't. We have to really give people love and attention, and then, and guidance and support. And there's, it's a time we have so much information, and I wish things have changed in a different way. And that's why I'm having this conversation. I just want people to realize that there really are so many natural things that people can do that are ridiculously effective. They're just not hearing about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And everybody who's listening, take care of yourselves. Shane and I are sending our love and support to you. And Dr. Roseann is here if you need her. I'm sure you can contact her in any way that you can get a hold of her. But this has been such a great discussion, and hopefully you guys all get something out of this.